my sound output.
John, I think we are live. How
Okay.
about that? How about that? How's everybody doing? Hello, Compass Game friends. So I'm Harold Buchanan, of course, and this is the SD HisCon online, and we're going to have a bit of a experiment here. We're gathering some Compass Games designers that are working on interesting things and have done interesting things, and we're just going to talk about what you're working on. So welcome to John, Gilbert, and Mike, and we can just take off from here. John Southard, what would love to hear some more about what you're working on. I've seen the Philippine Sea.
Right.
Is the most recent.
Yes.
And of course, as you and I have discussed, your history goes back to the days of Carrier and Tokyo Express at Victory Games. So would love to hear what you're up to and what's going on.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And it's so great to be here with all of you. An honor indeed. John Butterfield, you and I met in the halls of West End Games decades ago. You probably don't remember it, but I sure do, because I was getting introduced to John Butterfield. I mean, it's just a big deal for me in that time. So anyway, it's great to be here with you once again. Oh, wow, look at that. Compass is shipping now the Carrier Battle Philippine Sea game, to which you just alluded, Harold. Thank you very much for that. That's a step forward from the Carrier game that I did for Victory decades ago, except this time it's about the Battle of the Philippine Sea. So definitely some enhancements to the design, some adaptations for that time period and so on. I also have in production with Compass a game that started life. I'm going to reach for a box here. Started life as a redo of the first game I ever did, which was Grant Move South with Quarterdeck Games. Get it in the picture here. And the idea originally was to do a new edition of that, but by the time I got done, it was a complete new game. Complete new design. All it had in common was the topic, and really not even that, because I broadened the topic a little bit. So I've got a little bit of map here that I will show you if I can hold it up to the camera. This is a playtest map. The title is Grant, the Western Campaign of 1862. You can see it's a point-to-point map. The idea basically being to allow people to simulate this whole campaign in a few hours of gaming. So it's a highly playable system, quick moving system. Gives a good deal of focus, as did the original, to some of the details of battle, because there aren't very many battles in this campaign. There's a small number of battles, so you can afford to spend a lot of effort on resolving the battles. So the battle system feels suspiciously like you're actually playing a tactical game. Units shoot at each other and get demoralized and retreat to the second line and so forth. This is in production now with Compass, been through 2 different rounds of playtesting. You can see we have finished art. It has recently benefited massively from the attentions of Brittany Pearl McFadden, who is wonderful, extremely thorough, going over all the details and really helping it take a step forward as far as production readiness. And I am actually working, as far as design goes, on this game here, which probably some of the people in the audience have seen. This is, of course, Carrier, Victory Games Carrier. At least that's what the top part of the map is. But if you look around the bottom part of the map, you'll see it's not the same. So this is my current project, and it's an updated, upgunned edition of the Carrier game, but using some of the ideas and some of the improvements, especially rules presentation improvements that we did for Battle of the Philippine Sea. So I'm really excited about that. Anyway, that's enough about me. Let's hear about some of these other guys.
Well, yeah, certainly more to talk about, John. I'm going to go down our line here. I've got Mike, Gilbert, John, and Bruce. So, Mike, why don't you tell us about what you're working on?
Sure. So, Harold again, and Compass, thanks for inviting me in. I'm a first-time designer. The game that I just finished working on, about a year ago, and it's expected to be published by Compass Games. It was going to be published, but it's going to be released, I expect, in the next week or so. It's called Prelude to Revolution, and it focuses on the years leading up to the revolution in Russia, say 1905 through 1917. It's based on another game. The system is based on a game called Prelude to Rebellion, which is a very innovative take on the area control card-driven paradigm by Marco Putre, published by Compass Games. That's the good news. The bad news, it's focused on a topic which is extremely obscure, which is the rebellion in Lower Canada in the 1830s, right? Exactly. Ask any 40 wargamers how much they know about that, and you'll probably draw as many blanks as I did when I tried that experiment.
Ask any Canadian, the same thing.
That's
They'll
right.
give you the same thing.
The one guy who knew about it was from Buffalo. Anyway, but the system is sound. It introduces lots of innovative techniques with scoring and card play and strategy, which for some reason when I was playing it one day, it just struck me like this would be great for the Russian Revolution. And ultimately, the design intent of the game, if I can use that term, is that it starts off in 1905 or so when a relatively civil politic was in place. There was an effort to actually improve the empire, and the Tsar and those who would term themselves revolutionaries, the government and those who would term themselves revolutionaries had some common ground. As the game progresses, as the Great War occurs, and then finally it reaches 1917 and those years, the game becomes more chaotic, introduces more powerful events, and the intent is, sorry, I think I'm talking over the top of somebody in the background there.
Yeah, gang, it might be easier if you can mute your voice.
There we go. So the intent is that the game should become more chaotic, more difficult for the players to manage. The extremism of the events and the extremism. Good for you, Jeff. The extremism of the events and the extremism, the impact of play grows as we continue. So it's an area control game. It's and Compass did a wonderful job on it, and I have to thank I'm very thankful for the fact that the designer of the first game, Prelude to Rebellion, is the developer of this game. So that allows us to keep the fundamental design engine intact while we add stuff on top. But anyway, this game should be shipping from Compass, I would guess, in the next week or so. So let me yield the floor back to the next lucky guy.
Well, Mike, can you talk about what's next or no?
Yeah, sure can. So we started off, I came out of the blue with Prelude to Revolution, and showed it to Bill Thomas at Compass. And he immediately said that, okay, so I'll give it a shot. Bill's does an incredible job of supporting and encouraging game designers. It's amazing. The volume of output of the company represents his commitment to supporting people designing games. He does a lot to help that. Once he had seen what I did, I suggested to him that perhaps a series, the system would support a series of games, and he agreed. The next game in the series is working title is Prelude to Liberty, which is America's Revolutionary Saga, and that will cover the period roughly from 1763 to 1776. So remembering these games are the prelude. It's the political and social foment and conflict that takes place that leads up to the event of the revolution. So, for example, we don't start unlike a very famous and wonderful game called Liberty or Death, which starts in 1775 when things are people have already been shooting at each other for a while. It's kind of things are off the rails already, and the rebellion is on. This game will start in 1763 when the Stamp Act and other heinous imperial edicts come down, and how the players will get the opportunity to either strive for accommodation and appeasement, and get the colonies back in line by accommodating some of their demands, or just stamp down on it, whereas the colonials can try and get their political rights respected, or ultimately take to arms. So that's next, and then we expect to have one more. We expect to have one more or two more games after Liberty, but we're not sure exactly what those will be yet. That's it.
Good, excellent. Yeah, thanks, Mike. Yeah, Compass fans in the room. Let's see, Gilbert. What are you working on, and what's next?
I think that way. The first game I did was Mr. Madison's War, GMT. That was done in 2012 for the bicentennial. Second game came out just last year, War for America, much along the same lines as your title there, Liberty or Death. A little bit more detailed, point movement. And what I'm working on right now, well, actually, Compass has it going to the printers, is the Kaiser's High Seas Fleet, which is going to be World War I dreadnought combat, based very much on John Edwards' original War at Sea. So we're talking simple game, area movement, just catered to World War I thought the War at Sea system actually was better suited for World War I than World War II. So I gave it a try. I brought it down to Compass in November. We play tested it. Reviews were good, and it's in the printers now. What I'm working on right now at this second is Ken Reppel's design. He's doing a Saratoga game. He's the guy that just released his 1812 on the Lakes game. I think it's shipping now. So I'm helping Ken as developer for that game. For projects for me, nothing in the works right now. I'm just helping Ken with this game. So that keeps me busy. And thanks for inviting me to this program, and nice meeting you all. I mean, I know all your names. I've seen your names in Fire and Movement magazine over the years. I've seen your games designed. John, I think the only game I've played of yours is Space Corp, which I liked. John Southard, I did try Tokyo Express in my early days. It kind of overwhelmed me, even though I liked it. And I did try your Antietam game, which was in Command magazine. And Harold, I haven't tried your Liberty or Death, but it's got to be one of the most beautiful darn maps I've ever seen. I would have loved to steal it for my game. It was just gorgeous. And that's about it.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Terry Leeds makes me look like a better designer than I actually am. So I love having him around. But I've played your game, Gilbert. I played War for America, and I enjoy it. I love the depth and the addition of the West Indies, and I just think it's a fun game to play. Did you face the same challenges I did? Just kind of asking yourself, do we really need another American Revolution game? Given
I know
so many,
well,
and then of course Washington's War, and right.
Sure. Well, I guess all of us, I grew up in the Avalon Hill era. U-Boat was my first game, then Gettysburg, Midway, Waterloo. Went through the SPI era, and up today. And I think all of us, we like to tweak other games. You'll buy a guy's game, you like it, and go, well, I don't like that rule, or I'd like to tweak that. And eventually you get the bug to maybe make your own game. And I loved Avalon Hill 1776. I just thought it was The Cat's Meow was my favorite game for years. And I loved SPI's American Revolution. And I think I bought every American Revolution game that's been put out. So I tried to take the best of all and put it into one. Some things worked, some things didn't. The British don't have a very good chance of winning in my game, I tell you. It is very hard to win. Yeah. But that's what I was trying to show. But
yeah. That's the story, right? The story of Liberty or Death is that there are other parties involved, not just patriots and British, and that's meant to drive that home. Joe Miranda also did a game on the American Revolution point to point.
Decision, and yes, that was very good for politics. Very good for politics.
Yes, as Joe is prone to be. So So yeah, I would love to talk more about your game, but let me move on to the John Butterfield experience. Hello, John. How are you?
Hi, Harold. I'm good. I didn't know I was an experience.
Oh, you're an experience, my friend. You're an
And
experience.
I'd like to say hi to Bruce Maxwell. I saw that he joined us.
Yes. Yeah. Hello,
Yeah.
Bruce. You know, I just sorry, a nagging cold, but you just had a presentation for an upcoming game from GMT that was very well attended. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, maybe? But you know, this is Compass stuff. But you fly whatever flag you want to fly, John. I don't mean to.
Yeah. Yeah, so that game is Away Team, The Voyages of the Pandora. It's a epic solitaire game where you're commanding a interstellar ship on voyages of exploration, seeking life on other worlds. And that's on the GMT 500. We're kind of halfway through the design of it, although most of the work is writing because it's going to have about a 92-page book of 1,000 passages that you access via links from the game map and the cards and so forth, so that it tells a story with many different arcs, short arcs and long arcs of like a 10-year period of exploration of this one ship. So yeah, we're having a lot of fun working on it, and I showed a lot of the playtest art and early artwork for the game today. Yeah, so that's what I'm currently doing with GMT.
One question, if you'll allow me, do you plot all of this out? I assume, do you plot all the paragraphs out before you write them?
We plot out story outlines. We kind of try to create enough room in our resources so that myself and the other two writers have some flexibility in how to present the story, whether through passages or text on cards or events and that sort of thing. We have a lot of kind of storytelling pieces in our toolbox, and so we don't get too prescriptive early on with how to tell the story. We work from outlines and then we do a lot of workshopping together.
Yeah, good. All right, I'll let you return to Compass. Sorry about the.
Yeah, thanks. So just recently published in the summer was Enemy Action Kharkov, and that was the second game in my Enemy Action series. That's on the third Battle of Kharkov, the one that featured the Soviet offensives of Star and Gallup, and then the Axis counteroffensive of Manstein's Backhand Blow. And like the other Enemy Action game, it's really 3 games in one box. You can play it 2-player, and it's a card-driven activation game, or you can play the solitaire version from either side, commanding either side. So those games are, as you can imagine, a lot of work. I complete one every 5 or 6 years. And so to counter that, to cleanse the palate, so to speak, I have another system with Compass called World War II Commander. And the first in that series came out a couple years back on the Battle of the Bulge. That in turn was based on an iPad game I had done. Or not based on, I designed a very simple Bulge game, Battle of the Bulge game, and then worked with Shenandoah Studios to create an iPad version of it. And then later, that same design became the source for the board game of Battle of the Bulge, World War II Commander Battle of the Bulge. It's a simple system with area movement, large counters. They're about 7/8 inch squares. And you can play the game in about 3 hours. And so that game was done a couple years ago, and now we have another one near completion. It's World War II Commander Market Garden, obviously on Operation Market Garden. And like the Bulge game, it's at a kind of a regimental level, and it covers the 10 days, the critical 10 days of that campaign. Am I allowed to share my screen?
My understanding is you can share your screen. So
let me see what happens when I try to do that. Screen sharing, yes, okay. And then I want to share a window. There we go. Do you see that?
I see it. How about that?
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
I see it too. Yeah, so this is the map. It's a 22 by 34, typical size. This final map was done by Bruce Yerian. He did a great job. We enjoyed working with him. The developer of the game is Bob Heinzman, and we worked with Bruce on this map. It shows the area in Holland where Market Garden took place. The west edge, the left edge of the map is south, and the right edge is north. So you have the British ground forces start here, and they're trying to get through Eindhoven and over the canals and over the rivers all the way up to Arnhem, where the British 1st Airborne Division has dropped. Between those points, you have the 82nd Airborne in this area and the 101st in this area. So using a simple area movement impulse system, it does a good job of recreating the battle, even though the counter density is very low. And I can show, if I want to switch the screen I'm showing. I was just
By the way, John, thanks for putting our logo, the SD HISCON logo, on your map up in the top right corner there.
Yeah, how did that happen?
Nice.
That is a really
We're
nice
everywhere,
addition.
John. We're
It's
everywhere.
kind of crowding the compass, but looks good. All right, so here, remove stop screen. Now I'm gonna see if I can share an image of the counters. They are here. Okay. Let's see if that worked. Whoa.
Oh my.
Oh, we're in infinity mode.
Yeah, that blew me
Everything
away.
everywhere all at once.
That's part of the Butterfield experience right there.
All right, I'm going to try that again. Stop that. Share screen. Pick window. Pick this window. Share.
There we go.
Okay, thank you. So this is actually an order of battle display for the Allies, but it shows you the counters. Again, they're large, 7/8 inch to a side. And so you have the 30 core units are tan, and then the various airborne formations, the British, the 82nd and the 101st are these brighter colors. And those are the initial forces for them. In the system, a unit is represented by more than one counter because as it loses strength, it goes down 1 point in strength until it gets down to 1. So a unit with a starting strength of 6 has 3 counters: 6, 5, 4, 3, and 2 and 1. And then in combat it loses steps or it retreats. And here's the German. I'm clicking on the image instead of the thing. Here's the German order of battle. They don't start with much on the map, as is usually the case in Market Garden games. And then they have a lot of reinforcements coming in. They're in 3 formations: the 15th Army, the 1st Parachute Army, and the 2nd SS Corps up in the Arnhem area. And that's all the units in the game on those 2 sheets. So it's a pretty low density, quick playing game. And we're at the point now where all the artwork is done and it's going into production. I don't know if printing has actually started, but it's ready to print. So that's the story with World War II Commander Market Garden. There are other games in the series planned, although we're not sure what the next volume will be. A young designer is doing a Stalingrad battle using the system, and then back when it was on the iPad, Mark Herman did a game on El Alamein called Desert Fox, and Ted Racier did one on the Battle for Moscow. Those are candidates as well.
Yeah.
So that's where that system's going.
Very good. Exciting. Thank you, John.
Yeah.
And let's see, we got Bruce. How are you, Bruce?
I'm doing well, thank you. I want to reveal my secret identity as Mike's twin, and is we just use different glass styles to kind of tell. And Gilbert, I play tested Ken's 1812 game. Really enjoyed it, so I'm excited to hear that Saratoga is coming out.
Yeah.
So that's cool. I'm at work at a game that John and I worked on way back in the mid 1980s called Air and Armor. I was the designer. John was my developer. I brought in
John Southard.
John Southard?
Yeah,
Which
John Southard.
John? Yeah.
Sorry, John Southard.
Yeah.
I should be clear when we have multiple Johns. But at any rate, I brought in a relatively simple game. John challenged me to produce a more realistic and complex game. That was a good push. Yes, I found a razor mow. Been making presentations to venture capitalists all week. I had to be clean shaven. But at any rate, John's instinct to produce a simulation was a good one. The years pass. And I got an awful lot of feedback from military professionals that they really like that game system. In fact, recently somebody made an introduction for me to the Army War College and the War Game Simulation Unit for the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And they're all on a Zoom call with me. And I start to explain the game. And they said, Bruce, don't bother. All three of us bought your original game back in '86. And we've all got your new game. Holy bleep. Anyway, so Compass approached me about publishing NATO, and I wanted to bring this back to the market. So I've been working on the Air and Armor Designer Signature Edition. I would like to just do a quick show here. Let me share my screen.
Please.
How do you share the screen? Is it the present button at the bottom on the software?
Yes.
Which one are you? Okay.
Yes, it should be that. All right, and of course I've got way too much up. Let's see if I can find Vassal. Here we go. All right, let's see if this works.
There it is.
Seeing my screen. Okay, so this is an operational tactic. I'd call it a grand tactical.
I don't know that we got the right page.
Aha, you should be looking at a map. No?
No, I'll
All right, I'll stop screen sharing. Let's try it again. This is always an art to find the right.
well, even the great John Butterfield needed a second try on that
Yeah. It
counter
was
set.
slippery.
Yeah, I'm wondering if it would just let me share the main screen, and then I wouldn't have to worry about finding the.
While Bruce is doing that, maybe I can add that I'm so happy to see this project because I left New York in kind of a hurry after my West End days and never got a copy of the Air and Armor game. It disappeared somewhere along the lines. And of all the ones I regret I don't have, this is the one. So I'm so overjoyed to see this coming out in the new edition. It's an unbelievably fun game and insightful and just an amazing thing. And Bruce taught me everything I know about that period. So Bruce, so happy to see you doing this. It's just a great thing.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. It looks like I'm going to have technical problems here, so this probably isn't going to work. But such is life. The basic point of the game was at ambush, surprise, deceit, maskirovka, all the things that you don't run into on a standard war game because you see every single unit on the map. You know exactly where it is. You know what it can do. So the basic concept of this game is that you have a unit, and underneath it you have a hidden step marker, and you don't know whether that is a dummy, a company, a battalion, or a regiment. And so the game is played above the game map as much as is played on the game map itself, in the sense that I'm trying to outguess you, you know, and it leads to that possibility of setting up traps, running feints, deception operations, ambushes, but battle, not done like an individual tactical ambush. But I can draw somebody into what looks like a weak sector of my line and then pocket them. So it's great fun, and our playtesters are having a blast. Compass wants to make a series out of it, so I'm hoping to get the files for Air and Armor in to the publisher this week, and then the idea is publishing in Q4, and then we're already at work on Spearhead, which takes the game system from the 7th Corps sector in front of Würzburg over to the 5th Corps sector in front of Fulda, back to the American Revolutionary War. You guys asked, does the world need another American Revolutionary War? I'm not sure the world needs another Fulda Gap game, but developer really wanted to take Air and Armor into the Fulda Gap. So I said, okay, let's switch. You be the designer, I'll be the developer, and I'll help you make that happen. And then I'm at work on what I always wanted to do with the game system, and that is to bring out British Army of the Rhine. So I'm very excited about that. That'll be fun. And with that, I'll stop.
Well, Bruce, I think you and I worked together on BAOR at SBI.
We did.
Yeah, okay.
We did. And to the best of my knowledge, other than Fabrizio Vinello, nobody else has done a version of that for a long time. So it should be fun to do. But John, you said something that my funny bone, and that's cleansing the palate. Boy, do I get what you're saying. I am so keen to go work on almost any other system except Air and Armor at this point. I'm Air and Armored out. I want to go, design something much, much simpler and fun. So.
I was wondering about that comment too, John. You're known for your tremendous solitaire games, and that's a space I've worked into, of course, as well. Do you find it necessary after you do a solitaire game to do something that is anything but solitaire, that is not solitaire? Do you need that context switch? Because I find I do. I can't work on 2 solitaire games in a row. If I got to do something else in between, which is one reason you have that Grant game stuck in between Philippine Sea and Carrier. I couldn't work on them consecutively. Just couldn't do it.
I think you're absolutely right, John. You have to get back into a world where you're actually like dealing with people instead of just systems. Right. And the interaction between people, because that actually kind of informs the feeling you should have when you're playing, even if it's a solitaire game. What's the feeling of playing another person, of having unpredictable decisions to make? Yeah. So after the first enemy action game, I did Space Corp, which was a 4-player game. And then back to, it's good to go back and forth to keep your head in society.
So speaking of people, Harold and I were talking about something. Another 10 years, we're going to be holding war game conventions in nursing homes. So, my question is, how do we get the younger generation interested in this? And part of that is your people point, John. War games are about interacting with live opponents, and on some level, that seems to be a dying art.
It is.
I would jump in here. We have a pretty sizable war game club here in New York, Metropolitan Wargamers. 40, there's 40 or 50 dues-paying members. There's probably another 50 who show up on and off. It's got a 24-hour premises and all this other kind of stuff. Games can stay up. Just to give you an idea, we had people who played Case Blue campaign back-to-back, switching sides to completion. So we have tables for that kind of thing. And I'm keenly observed, because I understand what you're saying. I've never seen so many men in my age bracket in one place at one time when I go to war game convention. So I found that there's a real we suffer from, in some cases, the older generation sort of considering themselves to be gatekeepers and credential checkers for newer players. So when somebody shows up and says, "Oh, I like to play Settlers of Catan and Memoir 44," it's like brush him out the door, get rid of. Instead of saying, "Hey, have you tried Have you tried this, hex encounter game, or did you try this area movement war game that you might be interested in? So we spend a lot of time at the club, and I think we should be spending more time collectively as an industry and as a hobby and a community, getting the older members, more famous members. Like, I used to come to the pizza parties Friday night at SPI and pretend to play test. It was always, but these are people who with encouragement and inclusion, I think we get another generation a little bit more interested. I think we're turning people away often enough, just from that attitude of, you don't play a monster game, you're not playing a game with a 60-page rule book, then not interested.
Yeah, the younger generation will definitely respond if you give them a game that doesn't have that high an entry bar. I've played many games with my sons who also get playtest credits on some of my stuff, and their friends. One of the ones we used to play a lot was Junta. You remember the old West End game, Junta? Yeah, Eric Goldberg and a couple other guys. Yeah, they loved Junta. They absolutely loved Junta. We didn't explain this to their parents that that's what we were playing, because it's a little hard, to sell that part of the older generation sometimes on this premise that Junta's basically you're doing a revolution in a Latin American state that has a let's just say a foreign large checks and doesn't ask too many questions, and it's a very tongue-in-cheek game. Well, you go ahead, Mike.
You're a member of the junta of an unnamed country who's being financed an undisclosed amount of money from an unnamed superpower, and your goal is the player with the most money in his Swiss bank account at the end of the game.
Right.
That's the president gets the budget. Nobody knows what it is, and basically the goal is there's 7 players, and me and John Butterfield and Bruce Maxwell collectively have enough votes and enough military to hold this government down for another turn. They're getting paid.
Right.
None of you guys are getting paid, and then but you have to get to the bank and not get assassinated by the Minister of Interior. A very, very good game. We played with the original designer Vincent Sau a lot. And
one of the arts is changing sides at exactly the right time, so that some other guy can go to the wall and you can be rewarded with the highest cabinet ministry in the new government. But anyway, they love that game, and others like it. So I'm really excited for Gilbert's project, for example, the Kaiser's High Seas Fleet, because that having a game at that level, I thought War at Sea was a brilliant system, and Victory in the Pacific, the same system is one of my favorite games. And to have something like that you can just take out, and it's a low bar to entry, and you can just play, and it doesn't have the big rule book, and also not the same concern. One thing about the younger generation is they don't have the same concern for the historical detail that we have, and we need to learn to embrace that. I've had people complain to me that there was one ship in the wrong task force, in a game I did. Well, okay, that may be true. I don't know. I wasn't there, but it's not like in our world it can't be that big a deal. Whereas the younger folks, my older son has said to me, Dad, you can't just make stuff up in your games. He doesn't quite get that concept that I can't just make the infantry weapon a little more powerful than it actually was in order to balance the game. No, I'm sorry. The Mauser 98 was the Mauser 98, and embracing that set of values a little bit is, I think, something we have to do, Bruce. So that would be my answer to your question.
Getting the young people in is a concern. We're all getting up there, and I know when I bring, say, Dreadnoughts miniatures to our local Can Games convention, it's a fairly complicated game. Everybody likes it, but to get the young in, it's got to be simple. You say, well, this Dreadnought's firing at that one, and it's 2 miles away, and you roll this to get hit. That's all they want. What do I have to roll to hit it? And then you can't get into, well, there's things like penetration and the distance, does it hit the deck? And they don't want to be bothered with it. I just want to know whether I've hit it or not. Okay, fine. And if you roll a 66, you get a magazine explosion. They want things to move along, and fair enough. I get it. The game's got to move.
I'll say this. I brought some gaming to my son's middle school when he was in middle school at the time. I convinced a history teacher, or the teacher who was teaching a history unit, that playing a game like Battlecry after they went to Gettysburg might be fun. I swear it was like a magnet for every 8 to 12-year-old boy within, within 500 feet when I set it up. And what was very cool is they had just come back from Gettysburg. I said, remember when you stood by the statue of Lee
Yeah.
on one side? Well, that's right here. And
Right.
remember when you heard about the clump of trees? Well, that's the clump of trees. But that got, I know a lot of kids just, they wouldn't, I left the game in the school, they wouldn't leave it alone.
Yeah.
I'm willing to bet a few came out of that saying, what else is there? What else can I look at?
Yeah. I did that with my girlfriend. I said, we're going to play Quebec 1759. You remember the old block game. Simple as hell. You roll 6, you get a hit. But I wanted her to know the geography. So after we played the game, that weekend we drove up to Quebec City. I said, okay, here we're on the plains of Abraham. Oh, yeah, that's where I killed yours. Yeah, see that island over there? That's the island of Orleans. Yeah. Oh, wow. Saint Lucie, that's where Wolfe put his batteries. She could immediately get it because she had moved the counter there, and you do that with kids and it just comes alive,
It seems like there are two tenets that we hold by as old gamers that make it harder for these young people to come in. And one of them is that you have to be thinking about the hex and counter games that we all grew up on.
Yeah.
And I love those games, play them frequently. Some people think I hate them because I say that for new people in the hobby, we need to think of some other way to get them in. There's got to be better ways to engage. And so the first is that our demand that they play Case Blue, right, when they come in and play our game. The second one is our demand that they really understand and love history from day one. And, I remember when I was young and I started playing and I had a friend that had SPI games and he introduced me to, and that lit the fire that got me interested. It wasn't that I had to be interested to start with. And of course, the things that I was interested in is tanks and airplanes and explosions, right?
Yeah, but your point is well taken. We can through games, and we can teach a love of history through games. And I think we lose that sometimes. It's one thing I really hope doesn't go away, because games like 1812, right, make a very dry subject in your history class, come alive.
Yeah. I'll ask you guys a question. You guys, I don't know Herman Lutman. I know his reputation, but do you know him at all? Herman Lutman? Okay. He just did this big, gigantic Gettysburg game, A Most Fearful Sacrifice. Okay. Big, very expensive game, $100 game, like Terrible Swift Sword, big. So I had the same attitude. Geez, do we need another Gettysburg game? So I bought it, and I just love this thing. And he's done something that no one's done before. You've played Terrible Swift Sword. You fire out a unit. You got to put a pin marker on him, or you put a strength marker under him. He routes. You got to put a route marker on it. Oh, he's in column. Got to put a column marker. And the game is just scattered with pin markers, route markers. It's just awful. He's gotten totally away from that. He's baked all those results in such a way there's only one marker, and it's an oversized marker, and it's underneath the counter. And if you go on Board Game Geek and see pictures of the board people playing it, you'll see hundreds of counters. There's hardly any pin. There's no pin, no column. It's a very clean game. And when the young people come up and go, wow, what's that? Oh, that's Battle of Gettysburg. Whoa. And they can see blue. Yeah, they're Union. Gray is Confederate. And there's all these crazy markers all over the place. So they they get it.
Yeah. There are simpler ways to do this, and I think Herman's game, I've played a ton of Gettysburg games like all of you. Herman's game is Most Fearful Sacrifice is the best, funnest first day of Gettysburg I've ever played.
I agree.
And I went to Constant World this past year and played it 5 times.
Yeah.
And, we would stop into the second day because it'd get into a big morass. But the first day was just a blast.
Yeah, and I find the Age of Sail games are the same thing. I've played Wooden Ships and Iron Man and Frigate and Man of War, all those same old thing. You fire the broadside, put the broadside marker down, then you hit his sail, got to put a sail marker on it. You hit his hull, got to put a hull marker on it. And by the end of the battle, they're just all ships full of hull and sail markers. It doesn't even look like an Age of Sail game anymore. There's got to be other ways. We've got to think outside the box of, doing another way.
You remind me, Gilbert, of when I first saw the Le Bataille series, and I'm talking about Wagram. although these many years ago, when it was the idea, and I had a lot of other things going on in my life, and wargaming was not my priority. But the idea that I could see the lines, I could see the the curve of the formations, I could see the things that were marching were all spread out. That visual impact, I think, is important in the game. I just also wanted to comment that what they did with the coin system, I think, was very important and illustrative. So we came out. What was the first one? Either Andy and Abyss, I think, was the first one.
Yes.
That was
Andy and
pretty
Abyss,
complicated. It had lots of mechanics in terms of how the areas interact and so on. There was a lot of chrome on that. But next out the door, as I recall, I think is Cuba Libre. This was tiny map, very few special areas, intensely interesting. I mean, I like the idea there that there was a money laundering mechanic in the game, and that you got to play the Meyer Lansky or the Frank Sinatra card, which was pretty cool. But more than that, it clarified the game down to the point where each player still could say, oh, I see what I got to do to win as the syndicate or the director or whatever. But you didn't have to manage all of that board and all of those different kinds of interactions between areas. It was brilliant. And then, of course, the wonderful Liberty and Death came out. And I'm not just buttering up Harold here, but also thank you, meandering Mike. But the fact that Harold was able to say, okay, now let's introduce some military aspect and keep it, and the friend, adding components onto it, so that I know plenty of people who started and young, players come kind of drifting in from role-playing games and drifting in from just this Euro type games, were able to really identify with Cuba Libre. There wasn't a lot on the board to think about, but the cards became interesting and so on. And then they were able to go on to Fire in the Lake or Liberty or Death. And then they're saying Liberty or Death, military. Is there any military game we can really try? And then it keeps going. I got to put a plug in though. Sorry, Compass. Academy Games 1775. Really good.
And their 7 Years War game. Yeah. They were very successful.
Yeah, I think the coin series, as I watch now, I watch people move from what we call Euro gaming, but non-historical gaming, into coin. And we would all love them to move over because they love the history, but it seems that many of them, if not most of them, move over because they love a good, complex, challenging game. And that's another thing that I see, in this community, I see us thumb our noses at these young people that come in and say, this is an interesting game. I want to play it because it looks like an interesting game, right? They're not interested in the history. And I think that's fine, frankly. I think it's good. And I think over time, we'll see many of those people get excited about the history. But I'd love to see these new people come in and challenge our games from just a gameplay perspective.
Yeah, and the young people bring a new strategy too. They're playing old fogies. I've got a certain way of playing, and then he'll do a move, and I'll go, "What? This is my son." I go, "What? I've never seen that before." They think out of the box too. They're not necessarily historical strategies because I'm more historical. I try to do sort of historical moves, but some of these new young players come up with some pretty interesting stuff. They're good for playtesting. Playtesting. Get some young people in there.
If we're talking about promoting the hobby, also one thing I want to point out, because I experienced it, was the experienced gamer who thinks getting you into gaming is best accomplished by stomping you flat mercilessly every time they play you, with the trash talk. Don't forget that part. And then say, okay, well, try it again. And of course, the justification is, well, how are you going to learn how to play? The answer is, I'm not like trying to survive on a desert island here and really need to learn how to use a stick to catch fish. I'm trying to enjoy a game. So I don't really want to be in survival mode every time. So I don't think it's okay to just play, throw a game to somebody, say, all right. But I have, for example, another system, not Compass, but even so, OCS, right? I think we all can, some of us will do this and some of us will do this, but we have a member at the club. She is the strongest OCS player I think I've ever seen. Nobody can take her out. But
what's OCS? Short forms? What's OCS?
Operational system. Oh gosh, I forgot. It's the gamers
Operational combat system.
OCS, Operational Combat System.
Oh, the gamer.
Highly
Okay.
detailed. You got to like move supply things to the area. It does
Yeah.
a great job. Very, very demanding, very interactive turn sequences. But yeah, she would beat me every time, but make sure that she was explaining to me what she was doing, pointing out to me why I may or may not want to do what I was about to do, explaining the mechanic, explaining the historical underlying intent of the mechanic while kicking my ass. But at least I came out of this saying, well, I really want to learn this, as opposed to somebody who just like slapped me around and beat me
Yeah.
and say, how about we play again? So I think that is important for us to be able to do.
Mike, I'd like to just pick up on that. There's something I love to say to new gamers because they have that fear that I'm going to do that. And I always say, listen, just consider there's absolutely no fun stomping somebody who doesn't know how to play a game into the.
Yeah.
My fun begins after the first game where you beat me. So I'm going to help you get there as fast as possible because that's when my fun begins.
Yeah.
And it's always an invitation to come in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
John Butterfield, a question for you and a question for the panel, but let me ask John first and then everybody else can chime in. Do you think about who's going to be playing your games? You've designed so many different games and interesting solo components and of course science fiction, etc. Do you think about who that player is and what their experience is before they play your game? How do you think about that, John?
Well, certainly I think about that, but I don't think it's the same audience for every game.
No.
I mean, the game's Space Corp that Gilbert mentioned, that was intentionally designed to be kind of a light Euro and to attract people in my, extended family to play, and we have. So no, when I'm designing a war game like Enemy Action, I'm just going to assume the audience is in that genre already. Something like Market Garden, the World War II Commanders series. There I'm trying to bridge a gap. So yeah, so I do try to not only the gameplay itself, but the way the rules are presented to make it not use any kind of lingo at all. Wanted to go back to Harold a little while ago. You said something about Eurogamers, making the leap to war games. See, Eurogames are a pretty new thing. Maybe going back to like the 1990s, they kind of started. There was this period when I started gaming. I didn't get into wargaming at all because I liked war or military history. I didn't really, but there was nothing else. 3M had kind of stopped making new things. I remember the 3M made a choir and Mr. President and some very interesting conceptually game systems, and they were challenging to play. But after that, there was nothing. Only war games. If you wanted to play an engaging, deep game, it had to be a war game. So that's why I got into the hobby. Yeah. But now you have people who are into, engaging deep games, and they don't have to play war games to do it. They're all these thousands of games on different topics. So, I guess I don't think of wargaming as this like, thing off by itself. It's just part of that community now. It's one aspect of what people play in that community. And I think we benefit from the connection. Like, I think Board Game Geek helps wargaming because we're all in the same pool and there's cross-pollination there.
I think John, just to follow that up, I'm willing to bet that many of us in the at least most every wargamer I know is from the 70s, 80s, 70s especially. You mentioned area movement. Oh man, forget it. That's not a war game. If it doesn't have hex encounters, it's not it.
Yeah,
that's it doesn't qualify. Meanwhile, I think all of us, I had the experience of leaving the hobby for a while, then coming back. So I was a newcomer to the hobby, and I started getting like my copies of Panzer Blitz and things like that. And Adam Starkweather, who was a member of our club, said, "Mike, no one's going to play those with you." Why? Because I didn't put on deodorant this morning. No, the state of design has progressed to the point where those games just nobody wants to play them anymore. And now area movement, all these unique and interesting ways, and the fact that we have people coming to, somebody wrote in the chat that Herman Lutman had been pilfering, their words, Euro games for mechanics for years. Well, that's great, right? The fact that he's bringing that in, so now you have somebody outside of what we would consider our community or hobby, comes in and say, "Oh, I recognize it's different, but I recognize the basic things in here." You get card game players who recognize cards and the importance of managing hands and knowing what cards to play. But now it's card-driven war games. It's like, oh, okay, but I know cards. So that all opens things up for us. So for a lot of different people, I think it's important.
Yeah, if I
Yeah,
could
back in
circle
the,
back to your
sorry.
original idea there, Harold, about, what do you think about the person who is going to play your game? I've done startups for a living. I've helped to start 184 tech companies. And obviously, that mindset is you've got to know your customer and why they are buying your product or your service. And so I think a great deal about what demographic am I trying to attract, what age group, what professional affiliation, are they playing this game for discovery? Are they playing this game for mastery? Are they playing this game for the history that they might this game because they just want to win? Are they playing the game because they just want to blow things up? All sorts of different reasons why people play games. But I do think that a consideration of your audience informs how I would approach a design a lot. If I'm designing for an audience that is very into the Cold War, as an example, and includes a lot of officers, I'm going to design a completely different game than if I'm trying to design a game for history buffs who just want a light evening's entertainment and some fun with some friends. So I think if you ignore who your audience is, it's extremely easy to end. What was that old joke? A camel was a horse designed by committee.
So Harold, I'll jump in. Thank you for bringing this back to the question, Bruce. I being a brand new designer, one-time designer, maybe we'll continue. I thought about it this way. I kept in mind each time I worked on Prelude to Revolution, the experience I was hoping the player will have. So I wanted to be. I'm more interested in a cinematic experience than a simulation. I wanted to make it that, as I described before, the sense of accelerating chaos and loss of control on the part of the players, but still reward smart play and not just blow the game up so that players encounter events that ruin their strategy, even though they play carefully and correctly. But I figured, well, there's the world of two-player card-driven game players. Okay, so we kind of have a base audience, but I'm really not looking for the player who is I'm looking for anybody who wants to play the game, but I had in mind the player experience. So all of my design decisions, wherever I could exert control on what was happening in the way the game would be structured, it was always with the cinema, the accelerating lack of control, the accelerating extremism in the politics of the era. As long as that was being modeled, then I think players who are want to experience that and immerse themselves in that will enjoy the game. Yes, Mike, I was on the design team of the Aulic Council that designed Jack the Ripper, as well as most of the members there were members who designed Junta and Hannibal and a few other games. Thanks for remembering. And Mohawk. Thanks for remembering. But I didn't think about, I want to get this demographic. I said I wanted to deliver this experience to the players.
Mike, did you have something to do with Mohawk, the game Mohawk from the Aulic Council?
Yes, in fact, who was it that brought up Quebec? Quebec was 1759. That was a game that the three of us would sit and play for hours upon hours upon hours. It became a religious experience rather than a gaming experience.
Mohawk, is one of my favorite 7 Years Wars game. I'd like to see Compass reprint it. But Harold, getting to your point about the audience, and it dovetails with Mike, your game, that game that they did on the rebellions of 1837. Now, I was very proud of Compass taking on a subject, because when they released it, I said, holy cow, who is going to buy this game? I know the average Canadian knows nothing about the rebellions of 1837. And, with all due reference to Americans, I don't think you know much about it. It's an obscure rebellion. It's important in Canadian history. It's boring to read about. And I thought, a game on this? And yet it's a good production. Apparently it's a good game. I wouldn't know. I didn't buy it. I don't know who would play it. I don't know who that audience would be, but Compass published it. Now, I'm pretty sure it's not sold out. It's probably one of Compass's worst sellers, but I'm proud of them for releasing it, but I don't know who would buy it. I really don't.
Yeah, well, doesn't that speak to something, though? I'm sorry, I just make one comment. We say, don't we have enough American Revolution games or Battle of the Bulge games or Gettysburg games? Apparently not,
Right.
because our community, it's like, good, they're great games, by the way, but I'm getting that Bulge, Last Blitzkrieg, I got it. Fearful Slaughter,
Right.
Yep, gimme. And, but, let me give you my experience. I knew absolutely nothing about the Crusades, didn't even care, and didn't care to know. But I had a gamer at the club who always played anything I suggested. So when he suggested, I think it's called Kingdom of Heaven. It's a card-driven game on the Crusades. Yeah. I said, okay, fair is fair. I'll play that. Oh my gosh. Drew me in, completely immersed. And then I went and bought this 3-book set about the Crusades and studied about it and so on and so forth. I knew nothing about the period and wasn't interested, but got drawn into it. The problem with the rebellion in Lower Canada, because it kind of boils down to, they got really mad, and then they all got shot, hung, or exiled and jailed, and that was it. As soon as
when I saw the boards, I expected a map of Lower Canada and Upper Canada. The skirmishes were small, but I got a board that was sort of like a Parcheesi game with levers and stuff. It's similar to your game, Mike Willner, in a different way, but it didn't have the geographical map. So it's not a military game. It is a political game. Got it. I just don't know much about the rebellions of 1837. I've been to a few of these sites. They're little wee sites, but they're obscure. It's hard to even get a book on the rebellions of 1837. They're out there, but I don't know.
I want to circle back to this idea of bringing new players and younger players into the hobby. There's one thing that has often struck me, and that is rules books.
Oh, God.
Reading becoming a dying art in some sense. The younger generation really absorbs information digitally. They're not absorbing it off the printed page anymore. And so for Air and Armor, which is a complicated game, I am partnering with Mo Fitzgerald with the idea that we will produce a series of very short 3 to 5 minute video clips that focus on key elements of the game and attempt to teach gamers how to play the game with nothing but the videos and the procedures on the charts and tables. And the rules book itself actually says, we recommend you don't read this book. It's here as a reference work if you need it. Go online, series of video clips. I'll teach you visually and graphically, and we'll get you into the game fast. Now, will it work? I don't know. This is my first experiment, but I want to see if it is possible to bring younger people in with a different mode of learning.
Have you seen Stuka Joe's videos? You must be familiar with Stuka Joe's videos. They're teaching videos. And I bought A Most Fearful Sacrifice. But once I saw Stuka Joe's videos on teaching it, it was about an hour and 15-minute long video. I'm sold on that. That guy really knows how to teach. And he's got the equipment at home. He's got sophisticated lighting and tracks to move the camera. That guy really knows how to, and that's kind of the way of the future too. Because 63 pages of rule book, 10-point font.
Tim, you really don't want to see Mo dancing.
I really commend you, Bruce, on that initiative. It's a great initiative. And I remember many years ago, the late Redmond Simonson, God rest his soul, mused as a joke almost in a column in Moves magazine. He was wondering what would happen to SPI when schools ceased to teach the irrelevant school of reading. And Redmond didn't quite, unfortunately live to see the day when that's more or less happened. But thinking about that is huge. I learned to my cost with my game, The Conquistadors, that if you want to try to bring in the Euro market, you have to thinking about your audience. You have to think about that audience and think about their expectations. I had hoped we might see some crossover with that game because it was a low complexity war game on a topic that might have some broader interest. It wasn't pushing panzers around. It wasn't highly numeric. It was just roll the dice and see how many hits you get. It was heavily card driven, all that stuff. The only problem was it wasn't presented the way Eurogamers expect a game to be presented, and it got panned by a number of Eurogamers on Board Game Geek who said basically the game's unplayable. I can't figure out how to play it. No, what they couldn't figure out how to do was read a rule book written to wargamers. So that's on me. I couldn't, to turn that around, I couldn't figure out how to write a rule book that would be specifically directed to Euro gamers. But it'd be interesting. We should hear what Bill Thomas has to say. Maybe we can get him to sponsor a line of games, of Compass games, that are specifically targeted as bridge games for Euro people, and it wouldn't be expected to succeed with wargamers, because the Conquistadors, again, I'm learning from my own experience here, also took hits from the hardcore wargamers saying, oh, it's not concrete enough, it's too abstract, it didn't have specific dates on the turn sequence and all that. Well, yeah, guys, sorry, I mean, that wasn't what I was trying to do. If you want to know how Cortez did it minute by minute, I got some books I can share with you, but that wasn't what this game was about. Please don't tell me I have the wrong 34 guys at Cajamarca. It's not this game. So you having the right expectations, is important, and then designing to those expectations.
Yeah.
Oh, John, do I want to pick up on that? Every game that I've done since I got back into game design, the opening paragraph is crafted around trying to set those expectations. This is a game designed to accomplish this for this audience with this intent behind it. If you don't like that, this is not a game for you, right?
Yeah.
But if you can set that expectation up front, people will at least go, well, okay, this is what he was trying to do, as opposed to this raw interpretation of here's the design, I don't like it, right? If the designer has told you you won't A, B, and C, and that he's trying to accomplish D, E, and F, well, I'm not going to judge him harshly for not accomplishing A, B, and C. He told me up front he wasn't trying to do that, right? So I do think that's really important, or you just get general purpose critiques that really miss the mark because that wasn't what you were trying to do.
Yeah, I think that's a great place to end it with those comments, Bruce. Thank you. It's been a real pleasure having the five of you on. I feel like we should do this again soon because there's much left uncovered. And so thanks again for joining me and coming to the SD HISCon. And you all have a good rest of your evening.
Thanks, Harold.
Thanks, Harold. Thanks.